Welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. In a bid to effectively combat corruption in Nigeria, the federal government introduced the whistleblower policy in 2016. Now, that policy aims to ensure that persons who make disclosures and persons who may suffer reprisals in relation to disclosure of corruption dealings are protected under the law. 6 years down the line, the federal government has acknowledged that its whistleblowing policy has lost momentum and could not stand the test of time due to a lack of protection laws that would guarantee the safety of whistleblowers. This is as the government puts in place a legal framework for the policy that will significantly enhance the fight against corruption in the new whistleblower draft bill, which was approved by the Federal Executive Council last week. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, explains that the new bill will prioritize the protection of whistleblowers that provide helpful information to the federal government. In a related development, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission says it has recovered over 30 billion naira from the former Accountant General of the Federation, Idris Ahmed. Now, Ahmed was arrested and is currently facing prosecution after a whistleblower accused him of 109 billion naira fraud. Joining me to speak on all of these and more, I have Kolawole Ogundare. He is the Program Manager, African Center for Information and Media Literacy, AfricMeal. Also joining us, he joins us now from Abuja, and joining us from Washington, D.C. is Lanre Suraj, who is the chairman of HEDA Resource Center. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let me start with you, Lanre. Let's start with the whistleblower draft bill now and the reasons given by the government for coming up with that draft bill. How important is the bill?
Thank you very much. I think the importance of the bill cannot be overemphasized. These are issues that we've brought to the attention of the government for over 4 years now. And the bill itself, which was the original that was proposed even under the previous legislative assembly by even civil society and members of the assembly through the private member bill that was unfortunately converted to witness protection bill that eventually also got passed by the assembly and also signed by the president, was not actually dealing with the issue of the whistleblower per se. But I mean, there's a difference between witness and a whistleblower. You can be a witness without being a whistleblower. And that point we raised with the government severally. We've had several interactions, made several submissions that the government was not only just losing the fight against corruption with the inability of the legislative framework and legal support to protect, our whistleblowers from reprisal, and also to hold accountable people who would go after whistleblowers after supporting the government, because this government enjoyed quite a whole lot of, positive response from the public using the whistleblower policy for asset recovery, and that was a momentum that should have been protected by the government. But as usual with government and politicians, they see things until it hits them either in the face, or any other part of their body. When you can see it even from afar, they would fail to see the same thing. So it is good that finally they have come to that realization, and now an executive bill is going to the National Assembly, which normally should enjoy a more expedited parliamentary process.
Let me come to you, Kolawole. Do you think that this bill now, when passed into law, would make a difference? Do you think the reason why people do not seem to be blowing the whistle as they used to in the past is just because of the lack of protection now for whistleblowers?
Yeah, thank you very much. I believe that with this bill, if this bill could scale through and assented to by the president, it will make a lot of impact in ensuring that people, voluntarily, provide information as to corrupt practices because at the initial stage, people were willing to come out to provide information, which led to a lot of recovery. But because of fear of reprisal, that's why people no longer want to, volunteer information, because they feel that their life is not secure, their job is not secure, their family is not secure. And it's because there's no legal protection for whistleblower. And that is why we don't have much recovery as it was at the initial stage. So I believe this bill will make a lot of impact, to make a lot of changes.
Let me come to you, Lanre. Now, you did talk about whether this bill would get an expedited passage in the National Assembly. Of course, we just have to wait and see. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the usual tradition in the parliamentary process is the executive bill that comes from, the executive arm of government. It's usually given that expedited consideration, hearing, and also acceleration within the parliamentary procedures and operations. So we're expecting, especially now that the members of the parliament are now, to a large extent, convinced that the executive, the government by extension, is now serious about protecting whistleblowers, and now could be said to be committed to it. So it's now a function of the scrutiny that will be brought to bear in looking at the bill to ensure that it covers the field, to ensure that it also protects, whistleblower genuinely, to also ensure that, there's sufficient framework and appropriate institutions that would undertake the protection of the whistleblower before it is passed into law, so that we don't have, reasons to have amendments to the bill, even sometimes before its operation and implementation, or immediately into implementation. So we're expecting the National Assembly to immediately commence, the consideration procedure and have, participatory public hearing, not the kind of public hearing that will be conducted, with notices to stakeholders 24 hours to, the hearing days, or less than a week for submission to come from the civil society. So we expect that the National Assembly would make the draft bill available to public for contributions, and then have the public hearing that would allow for the participation of all stakeholders, and then can help to also enrich the process of passing the law.
Kolawole, other than the protection now, the protection for whistleblowers, what other thing do you think the government should try to include in that bill that could help drive this fight against corruption that even the government itself admitted seemed to be losing momentum?
Yeah, I think it's important that in the bill, though we at the initial stage, when I think around last year, we had a discussion around the bill because the Minister of Finance had a retreat, I think about a week retreat, where CSOs were actually invited to make input into the bill. We just hope that that was the one sent to approved by the FEC, so that because we look at the protection for whistleblower, protection for their family, and we're also looking at making proper use of recovery from that process that is actually used in a way that it will help the society, not just making recovery alone. But we're also thinking that beyond monetary recovery, what of other properties? What of other things that are not monetary in value? And this bill also take care of that.
And that leads me to the next question, Lanre. He did talk about other items now that are not monetary in nature, maybe property and all of that. If people blew the whistle on that, I'm just wondering, how would they be compensated? Because this time you're not talking about money, you're talking about property. And one of the problems we have also seen is that people have actually talked about is that, look, sometimes people blow the whistle, and then when it comes to the period of compensation, the process is bogged down by bureaucracy. They don't get compensated as quickly as possible, and sometimes it drags on for too long, and so people are not encouraged to blow the whistle. I mean, how do you address all of that?
Yeah, I think, okay, so let's take it one after the other. For any of the other assets that are subject of the whistleblowing, ultimately will be converted to money. So either it is house, it's jewelries, or whatever. The government is most likely going to sell it, and then that is supposed to be the process, especially when it is of a national asset that belongs to every arm and also every tier of government. So the government is expected to sell it and then send the money to the consolidated revenue, where it will be shared among the three tiers of government. So the whistleblower then is entitled to the value, the percentage that according to the structure of the whistleblowing policy, the percentage that is then applicable to the value, because that is the percentage is determined by the value of the asset, and that ranges between 1.5 to 5% for the whistleblower. In terms of the bureaucracy actually wasn't just the main issue. The main issue at that point was the corruption that then happens within the civil service and the ministry, where quite a number of the whistleblowers were subjected to some very unwholesome practices of compelling them to work with certain designated lawyers by members of, by staff of the Ministry of Justice and some of them in the Ministry of Finance, by also deciding for the whistleblower what will be the percentage and sharing percentage or formula for the proceeds of the whistleblowing. So that constituted a major setback for that policy and its operation. The one that deals with the timeline, I mean, what needs to be understood is the fact that it is the subject of the whistleblowing or the asset is not converted immediately that the whistle is blown. So it takes a process. So the government or the law enforcement agency will have to go first for the forfeiture, usually, which doesn't come just immediately. You get the interim forfeiture, which then frees and at the same time protect the subject, which is the asset or money or whatever. And then not until when you get the final forfeiture, which also is subject to the court, is subjected to the process, before you can be talking about getting, the percentage that is due. But quite a number of people are usually impatient to also wait for that period and process, and also the lack of trust that you have in government. So even when people can see that those processes are ongoing, there's still that mistrust that is there, and you're not sure if the government officials or representatives are going to live by their commitments or their promises. So at that point, the whole thing about whistleblowing and also engaging with the opportunities that are there became a kind of a major challenging situation for both the asset recovery and the fight against corruption. Ultimately, what would happen, even though you have the practice like in places like in the US, where you get percentage for, whistleblowing and stuff, the ultimate thing for us should be about having people to see something and say something, and not necessarily because there's going to be the monetary benefit. I think there should be that consciousness at the back of both the people and the lawmakers, that, this is not just going to be the whole thing that would have to be about Nigeria, so that, people can be more patriotic to the system than the benefit that they will accrue. So people who would do it without going for the benefits, the state should also be able to provide some measure of cover, some measure of support for them, so that there can be that sense of patriotism that would come with, the whistleblowing for people.
Kolawole, recently the EFCC said it recovered 30 billion naira now from the former Accountant General of the Federation. Of course, we still do not have concrete evidence as to how, or we do not know exactly how much, even though some figures have been bandied. We do not know exactly how much was stolen, so to speak, by the former Accountant General. But for the EFCC to say it has recovered 30 billion naira from him, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. But I think we should go beyond getting recovery. The system should take care of preventing such an occurrence, because if one man alone can, take about 150 billion naira from the account, I think it's a very serious one. So we should be thinking of how to prevent even taking anything at all, rather than getting recovery, because there is no possibility that they are going to recover everything from the man. So to me, this bill should be in a way to help, because somebody must have blew the whistle before they discover that amount was taken from the treasury. So if this bill comes to pass, I think probably it will help in a way to prevent such occurrence. But we should think of preventing taking anything at all than getting recovery from whoever must have stolen from the public funds.
And Larry, that's one area it would appear we're not, placing more emphasis on, prevention, which of course is the best thing. How do you prevent, this stealing from happening in the first place? Because the truth is that, just as Kolawole said, the moment the stealing takes place, it's always difficult to recover. And you look at all our actions so far, I mean, whether policy or otherwise, it would appear that we've not placed so much emphasis on prevention.
Yeah, I'm happy that you actually alluded to this example. This is really very instructive, and this is part of what we started engagement with. And one of the things that we've seen in the fight against corruption is that corruption has gone beyond what we actually see or read actually in the papers. The prevention mechanism is not just going to be government or about government. It is about every one of us. We must be able to say no to some of those things that we consider like, friendly gesture, family support, and all the rest, for people who we know are not operating or living within their means. And we can't pretend about it. You and I will know those within our community, within our friendly circles, within our family, that are living above them. Anybody that you cannot actually, or that cannot explain, their source of wealth, or you can also not trace to. There's nothing like, businessman and all that kind of rubbish. You would see the money with people, and you can see the work that they do to actually acquire or accumulate such wealth. That is where we all must actually start playing the role.
I understand you, but what I'm actually asking is, I'm talking about putting in place, Larry, if you can hear me, I'm talking about putting in place, mechanism, whether it's technology or what have you. I know, for instance, eyepiece was designed to prevent stealing in the public service, and to some extent, it's been able to check certain things. But the point is, it does not appear we're making enough investment, especially on technology, to prevent, for instance, stealing in the civil service? How could you have a situation where one man, for instance, would steal over 100 billion naira? How is that possible? So probably if there was a technology in place, if we had made this investment, it probably would not have happened.
DEJI, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Go on.
Look, if you bring about the best technologies in the world, and that is why you have some of the failures and failings within the system, it is still going to be managed, operated, or fed by man if our mentality does not change. Go to the international airport, the old Murtala Mohammed International Airport. You would see the equipment, state-of-the-art equipment that are installed on Monday at that place. By the time you get there on Friday or the next week Monday, it stops working. By the time you get there the next 2 months, it is removed, because that will remove the opportunity for corruption and solicitation of bribes. It is about the human thing. I was going to the Ahmed Idris case. Now for the ANAN, which is a member, the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, he is a member of that body. And the law setting up ANAN says if any of the member misbehaves in whatever character, this is somebody that has been removed from office by government for misbehavior. This is somebody that is forfeited about 30 billion to the federal government through investigation. This is somebody that is already standing trial. We have written to ANAN to say this is a member of your association, and you are required to actually refer a case to the disciplinary committee. So we're bringing it to you. Rather than ANAN, that is so, when you talk about mechanisms, there are mechanisms for people who will just fail. The human aspect is the major problem that we have in the country. ANAN is saying, oh, you are not a member of our association, so you can't report the case for them to investigate. The law does not say that the report or complaints about any member can only be from a member of the association. Anybody can complain. And would that be the primary consideration for an association that is interested in the integrity of its association and members? Shouldn't that have been a basis for ANAN to have it? Is it about the source of the complaint or the cause of the complaint? So when you have some of these mechanisms that are meant to deter people, that are meant to impose appropriate sanction, heavily compromised in this situation, then it's going to be extremely difficult. No matter how much of technology, no matter how much of mechanisms, no matter how much of EFCC that you bring about, it will only be about recovery rather than deterrence or prevention. And that is where our human sense, human mentality, and our approach to many of these issues are properly addressed before we want to resort to just technology and use that as escape route for the characters in office.
I think I understand you perfectly well. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program. Kolawole Ogunbiyi, Project Manager, African Center for Information and Media Literacy. Thank you very much for your time. And Lanre Suraj, Chair of Header Resource Center. Thank you also for coming on the program.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.